Hi everyone, and welcome back. It's Wednesday, 10 a.m. CET, and we're back with the Back to Basics web development live stream. Hi everyone. I can see DJ in the chat. Awesome. Hi DJ, Henrik. Great to see you guys. So I have tweaked my audio settings a little bit with the mic. We had some feedback that the audio was a little low last time, and I maxed out the audio gain thing in my stream setup. So I had to put a filter on to increase the gain even more, but then I had background noise. So then I had to put a noise suppression filter on it. So please let me know how the audio is. And if that's all good, you can hear me well, then we can actually get back to our project. We can get back to the fictitious hands-on SPDev web shop that will never see the light of day, as in go productive. But yeah, that's our example. That's what we're building. All right, so no negative feedback, at least in the chat. Let's go. A bit low, but manageable. A bit low. Okay, let me see. Let me crank up the gain even more. Okay, let's see. Maybe that's better. Okay, cool. So thanks for that. And let's get back into our very beautiful architecture slide right here, okay? So last time going back to the first episode, we talked about the basic client-server architecture that you also much better. Okay, cool. That's good. So we talked about the basic, client-server architecture. We have the front end and the back end. Front end code runs on the client, so in the browser, essentially most of the times. But as I said multiple times, a client could be really anything that's capable of performing an HTTP request, really. And the back end is where our server lives. That's the code that is not visible to the user. It's only the API, only the sort of entry door to that server that is visible or usable to the client. And what we do on the server is sort of hidden, and that's where we create our list of products, and that's where we did all the things like finding this one product that a client might be querying for, and then sending that back as part of the response. And this is all the basic front-end, back-end architecture, and we already covered the server more or less, right? We have a working back-end. We can get all the products. We can get just one product. We can update products. We can delete them. So we have full CRUD capabilities. It's not OData. We'll get to that, but it's still all the CRUD capabilities. And it's not CRUD queue, so it's not, we cannot perform queries, things like that as of now, like give me the product where the name matches something, or things like that. But we'll get to that. We're still in the early stages here of all of this. Okay, so we covered the server side, and today we're going to talk about the front end. So the green box essentially here in the diagram. Oh. So let me put another green box around the green box. So that's what we're going to talk about today. HTML, CSS, and again, JavaScript. As I said before, JavaScript is both, both used on the server as well as on the client. And that's probably one of the reasons why Node.js is so popular, because a lot of the developers that already did JavaScript on the client were then able to transition to the server very easily, because Node.js came after. JavaScript was around since forever, and Node.js came after that and then enabled server-side JavaScript, so to speak. So that's that. And before I take hours to explain what HTML is, what CSS is, and what we can do with JavaScript and all that. Let me just do the example, and then we'll just talk and explain things along the way. Okay, so let's get into the code. Actually, let's clean up a little. So that is our project. That's where we left off last time. So at the top here, we have our index.js. That's where we define all the routes that our backend has. So we can get all the products, we can get the products, but then only just one product by passing this ID. We can, update, create new products, update products, all of that. Okay, and then we also clean things up a little bit so that we have our helper methods in a separate file. We have all the error codes in the separate file, and also the data in a separate file, just to not like overload this one index.js. Okay, so now to make some room for our front end, because currently our server sits at sort of the root of our project, right? And in order to, keep our structure nice and clean, and keep everything where it should be, I think it's a good idea to create a new server directory, because we're going to create a lot more files now, and we don't want the root of our project to be just full of a million files. Nice discussion for the chat. Oh, interesting. So DJ just said that if the request, as in this example right here, is not used, so this the first parameter that's being passed to this function is not being used, so he likes to prefix it with a with an underscore, just to first of all get rid of the warning here that the request is declared but it's never used, and also to just emphasize that it's not meant to be used down at the bottom, which is interesting. Yeah, I've seen this a few times. That makes total sense. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'll just keep it there. And by the way, you could now ask, why can't we just get rid of it altogether? But the thing is that the way this app thingy, not just prefix it, use the actual underscore character only. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's also good. So you might ask, why can't we just skip it altogether? But the thing is that this app.get, always expects the first parameter to be a string, and then the second one to be a function, and it will pass two parameters to that function always. And now, the way it is currently, we just named the request response, which is super confusing, obviously, so that makes sense. Only works when there's only one parameter to avoid. Yeah, that's also right. Sometimes you do have a next object, like a next object, like request, response, and then next, if you're building like middlewares or something. So then you have three, and if you only need one, and then you can't have two parameters with the same name, and yeah, whatever. I'll just keep the underscore in there. That's good. Okay, so I was talking about refactoring the project a little bit to make room for our client-side code, to not like overload the project root, right? So I will create a new directory called server, and you can see upstairs it was created, and now I can say that I want to move all JavaScript files into this new server directory. Okay, so if we now check this out, we have all the JavaScript files that we currently have in the server directory. Now we of course have to then update our scripts here, because now the server should be started with node, and then in the server directory execute the index.js, and same with the dev script. Okay, let's test this real quick. npm run dev, and that still works. Cool. And notice how this doesn't affect the routes at all. So it's still localhost 3000/products, but now we've internally cleaned up our structure a little bit more. And now I think what we should also do is we should extend all the routes that we have with a backend like that, so that all the routes start with backend, because we will soon add some some client-side things to it. And just to sort of separate our client-side and server-side routes a little bit more, I think it makes sense to just add backend to all the pure backend routes. And when I say client-side versus server-side routes, it's not that the route itself is any different, it's just that what we do inside that function is a little different. Because for the server-side route, we actually do, like what I call server-side route, we actually do some, things on the server. We execute code on the server, and we will soon add routes that will more or less just send a file to the client, and then this file runs on the client side. So that's my way of saying, client-side and server-side routes. The route itself is not any different. It's just that what we do inside that route, so to speak. Okay, so I think we got them all. That's good. Okay, so now if we go back to the browser and we hit refresh here, that doesn't get us anywhere. So now we have to say backend/products. Cool. Alrighty, so we cleaned up a little bit. That's good. And now we can add another new route to the index.js, this one right here, to actually start with these client-side routes, as I like to call them, right? So what we do here is that we now use the default route, and then we use a middleware called express static. And that just means that whenever someone hits that route, we just want to statically serve everything that's in the server/public directory. Okay, public directory is sort of a naming convention for files that are sent to the server as is, without any modifications, without any user-specific things. So for example, our index.html will always be the index.html, right? We will not change it based on the user. So we can put it in the public directory because it will just get sent to the client as is, okay? So all the things in the public directory are the things that we're just going to statically serve. And as you can see here, instead of executing code on the server as we do in this delete example above, we now just send a file to this to the client, and then the file is executed in the client scope, so in their browser, or in whatever their client, like whatever the nature of the client is, but it's usually going to be a browser. Okay, so now we have this route defined. So let's go ahead and actually create this new directory, the public directory, right? So public, and I will actually already create the index.html while I'm at it. Okay, so I have prepared a little HTML snippet. Let me paste that in there. And let's quickly go to the browser real quick, just to show you what that is. Okay, cool. So now we have a very naked web shop, I guess you could say. So what this is, it's just a few buttons and titles. That's really all it is. So we can go back to the code. So we just have a few elements defined, and HTML hypertext markup language basically just means we describe the things that we have. Like we have a div container, another div container, And then in there we have a button, and then we have another div, with a little text and with a heading, a paragraph here. Very, very simple. It's just the things that we have. And there's no logic, no magic here whatsoever. It's just, the things that we have. And then we can get CSS into the mix. We'll do that shortly to make that look a little nicer. And then eventually we can get JavaScript to do some logic for us. But what we should definitely focus on here or emphasize is that this HTML file is executed, not sure if maybe interpreted is a better word, on the client side. So as you can see here, I'm in the browser and I can see the elements of that HTML, right? That is the things that are in my scope. So I can see them. And as a matter of fact, I can change them too. See, so I can change this heading right here to be something else, which is always the case with code that runs on the client, because the code is fully transparent, it's fully visible to the client, because otherwise the browser wouldn't be able to do anything, right? It has to see the code, it has to execute the code. And if the browser can see it, a developer can see it as well, right? So going back to our security, concerns or things that we talked about last week, when we said that we should move as much things to the server as possible, that's exactly the reason. So unlike the things that we do in the index.js right here, the client will never be able to see what we do here. They will just get the response. They send the request, they get the response, and what happens in between is just a black box for them, which is a good thing, because it's not a black box for us. Okay? So that's just our markup. That's just the things that we have on screen, right? That's just the things that we see. And now let's make that look a little nicer. So I will copy over some, oh, that's a lot of code. I will copy over some CSS and put that in a new styles.css. Styles.css is also a very common name for just the global root, styles that we use. We can then later try and separate the different styles that we have into, like separating them by their concerns. Like if we have styling for all the headings, we could put that in a separate file. If we have styles for all the fonts, we could put that in a separate file. But for now, we're just going to throw it all in just this one file. And let me save that first so you can see what that looks like. Oh, you can't see what that looks like because obviously I have to link to that file from my index.html, right? Because currently the file just sits there on the server, but no one asks for it, right? So in the index.html, we want to create a new head tag, and inside that we just link to this styles.css, and it's sort of a type style sheet, okay? And while we're at this, we should probably also wrap, yeah, separation of concerns. We should probably also wrap our main contents here inside the HTML body. I just didn't do that before, just to sort of demonstrate how powerful modern browsers are, because you can see that I haven't refreshed this page yet, right? So, but we already have a head, we have a body, and then inside that body, that's where our content lives. And that's just the browser that added the body and head to it. We didn't provide that initially, but the browser was smart enough to fix that issue for us, so to speak, right? But now I've saved that, so we have a head that's linking to our styles, and we have a body, right? And if I hit refresh here, okay, that's good. We haven't done a whole lot, but we'll go through what we did here. So we basically just centered everything, right? And oh yeah, I know why. I wanted to add some more CSS classes. But anyway, let's go through what we did here. Okay, so how does CSS work? So CSS works in a way that we define rules of styling. Okay, so we define rules of styling, like margin should be 0, right? That's a rule we want. And then we also define what elements that rule applies for. So for example, here we say that I just have to read this comment here from DJ. Deliberately controversial take. The web, the browser as a target, is the true native for apps today. Phone OS-based apps are just proprietary me-docs. Okay, yeah, that's a hot take. Yeah, but I don't disagree. So we define rules in CSS, right? Like we say the margin should be 0, the padding should be 0, this thing should be 100% wide, all of these rules, and then we say to what elements this rule applies to. So for example, a body, that's just the body tag, right? And then we can also say that like we can construct the elements in a more detailed way. So we can of course say the body and then all the elements inside that body, or we can say all the things that have a header class. So this dot means all the things that have this class. And then I don't have any other examples here, but classes. So what we could also say is all the things that have ID, the hash is for ID. So, my ID, whatever. And then we can, for example, display none, means the things that have my ID as the ID shouldn't be displayed, right? Okay, so that's just roughly how CSS works. So we have these set of rules, and then we have the elements that this rule applies to. And then we have to use these classes in our HTML. So I will open this here. Let's get rid of this. So for example, the header class, which sets a fixed position, which means this thing will always, like, position fixed together with top 0 just means this thing will always be at the top of the screen, no matter what I do. If I scroll left and right, up and down, doesn't matter. It will always be just there, okay? So that, for example, is a rule for the header class. So in order to link that rule to an actual HTML element, we have to, and now I'm on the left side here, we have to say class header, for example, for this outer div container of our now header. We now said it has the class header. Okay, and then we also have other things like this welcome thingy here. So I just called it welcome, and what it does is it basically just aligns it's sort of a hero. You know what a hero layout is? Like if you go to a web page and you have the header, right? And then below you have this big image with, a call to action button. That's usually called a hero section. And this welcome section is very similar to that. So we say it has, a width, which is 100%. So 100% of its parent container. So if its parent container is 500 pixels wide, this thing will also be 500 pixels wide. And then we also define a height. And we can get into this calc thingy here in just a second as well. We define a pretty substantial height. So 1000 pixels minus, we'll get to that. And we can use this class in this thingy right here. So this is supposed to be my, hero section or welcome section. But then I also define some other CSS classes that are more generic. So this welcome thing, I'll probably only use it just once, just for this one hero section. But I've defined other CSS classes like space between, space around, and a certain width, like wide. Then center, column, row. These are all because as you probably have guessed, I'm a big fan of display flex. We can maybe talk about display flex a little more in just a few minutes. So I'm a big fan of using display flex because I think it's very simple and it's very powerful. And display flex comes with these, matching attributes or rules that you can use. Like if you have something set to display flex, you can say align all the items to the center, or you can say justify content space around, or you could also say justify content center as well. So justify content is always, with the current axis, with the, direction you're going, and align items is, 90 degrees to that. So we'll get to that. And then you can reverse, which direction you're going, whether you're going, left and right, or you're going up and down. Left and right will be a flex direction row right here, or you can say flex direction column, right? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I separated all of these display flex attributes or rules out into their own respective CSS classes so that I can then use them, separately as well in my HTML. And for example, for the hero section, I can now say, okay, we want to use this welcome class. We'll just make sure it's nice and big, essentially. And then I say it should be centered, like I will use the center class, and I want to use the column direction, so going up and down. So all the items inside will be stacked, on top of each other instead of going left and right. And then I also want to use the space around class. Space around just means all the items inside will be aligned in a way that the space around them will always be the exact same size. So instead of, crunching them all in the middle, we separate them, but we also leave some room around each element. Okay. So let's save that. And yeah, I think let's check that out. So I'll give it a refresh. Okay, nice. Okay, so you can now see we have a header section here. So going back to the header, we have the header inside. There's another container, and then we have the two buttons in there. And as you can see, no matter where I scroll, maybe you can see here when the web shop text is sort of cut off. So this header, I can also, yeah, you can see it. So the header is always fixed at the top of the screen, right? Because we said position fixed, top 0. Okay. Why don't we just, for testing, here it is. Instead of top 0, we say bottom 0, just for demonstration. Okay, so now we can see that the header is in fact a footer, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's the first piece. And then let's refresh. So the header is back at the top. And then we have our hero section here. And the hero section has, this big size, as I said. And then we also have it all centered. So all the items are in the center. And we also have them stacked on top of each other. So it's a column. And then we have some space around. As you can see, the space in between these things is, well, maybe you can see it below the web shop. There's a little padding there as well. Yeah. Although I do wonder why. Oh, there's. Yeah. So the actually all the text is in another container. So the space around example, or the space around takes effect for this div that is currently highlighted, and then this text, the let's learn and shop together, and then the button. So it's tough to get on. Maybe I can zoom out a little. Oh, maybe I can zoom out a little bit. Now maybe you can see it better. So the distance between the web shop and the let's learn and shop together is the same distance as this distance between the, this and the button, and this and the bottom of the page. So that's the space around. Okay, let me zoom in a little more again. Okay. So let's move on. So we now have it look a little nicer, but obviously we're not even halfway there yet, right? This is still, there's still a lot of room for improvement here, I guess. So now let's cover some fonts now. Okay, so in our styles, let's go to the bottom. I just copied in some code. So I just put a comment here. So this is all the font related stuff. I could actually move that into a separate fonts.css, for example. Maybe we do that. I think we should do that. Yeah, we should do that. So fonts.css, and then we, of course, have to, let me get rid of this. Have to link to it from our HTML, fonts.css. Oh, for me, there we go. So now we have defined styles for our fonts. For example, we define a class called italic, and that just applies the font style italic CSS rule to this element. So that will just make it italic. Then we have something called slightly bigger, for lack of a better word. So if we just increase the font size a little bit, it's, slightly bigger. And then we have set the margin for our headings, H1 and H2 to 0. And then we also say that the H1 tags or H1 elements should have a pretty big font size, like 3 rems. And then we also set a font family. Font family just means use this font style, like this typeface. And then we have a highlight class, and you will see what all of these, color, background clip, background image with a linear grading, what all that does in just a second, okay? So now we want to use these new classes in our index HTML. So let me get rid of this. So for example, the span tag here could have this italic and slightly bigger class. So I want a totally fictitious text to be italic and slightly bigger. And then the hands-on SCP dev text, the H1, I want this to be highlighted. So I want this to be highlight. Okay. So let's save all of that and give it a refresh. Okay, nice. So now we can see that the totally fictitious text is in fact italic. The classic SAP font 72. Yep, right. And then the headings are all the 72 font, and this highlight text here. So if I click on inspect, we'll just see that this in fact has the class highlight. And if we go to computed here, we can actually see how the element has been rendered. And if we check out the font family, we can see it's 72 bold. And the way, or you could now ask the question, why does 72 bold, like how does the browser know what 72 bold means? Is there like a central registry or repository for all the fonts available in the world? No, of course not. But there is a few fonts that you can load just via a URL, but then there's also the fonts that are just installed on your machine, right? And of course, I have 72 bold installed on my machine, so that's how my browser knows what that means. And if we want to use some other font, like from some other library or from somewhere else, or we want to make sure that all the users, that all the clients have it, we have to provide it as part of our application, right? As part of our client-side code that we ship. But we will actually use the UI5 web components at some point, maybe today, I'm not sure. So that's why we don't play around with fonts now too much, because that will be all taken care of for us. Okay, but that's why we have the 72 sort of pre-configured, and the browser just magically, my browser just magically knows what that is. Okay, so that's all good. And I think I also want to add a class center to this inner div container. Oh, center. You can see, that was a pretty good example of how using CSS or developing with CSS really is. Like, this meme of Homer Simpson where he, pulls this curtain thingy, and each time he pulls it, like it moves in a different direction. That's sort of working with CSS. Or you pull the red, you push the red button and the green light goes on. You push the red button again, the blue light goes on, and something different happens every time you do it. Okay, so we're taking an iterative approach here. So now we have, in fact, centered all the things in there, and this also set a display flex, right? Because we have this center class, but display flex per default goes in the row direction, so from left to right. So we have to say center column, and now we have it centered, actually centered from, it goes from top to bottom, and then it is centered in that regard. Okay, cool. And let's move on. So this doesn't look too bad, right? Of course, it can still get better. So let's now use some images. Okay, so I will again copy some code over. Let's go into the, well, actually, yeah, let's create a new images.css, because why not? So I created a new images.css and said that I have a background class, and all elements, that use this class should be positioned absolute. So that means, actually, that it's not exactly easy to explain what that means. So position absolute means that it should be positioned absolute, not relative, in relation to the nearest parent that has the relative attribute. So it goes sort of up the hierarchy and then finds that uppest, like, or the nearest parent that has the relative position, and then sets it absolute to that position. Okay. I guess that's one of the things you just have to try out and sort of see what that means. Sort of difficult to explain. So anyway, we set a certain height for that background. We say the top should be whatever, like minus 150 pixel, because probably I'll show you the browser in just a second. And then we also set the Z index to -1, which essentially means move it to the background, like move it one layer, behind everything else. Sort of center back, I guess you could say. In PowerPoint, it would be center back. Okay. So obviously we have to link to that new CSS. What's it called? Images.css. Okay. And now we want to use this class as well. So I think we want to put the anvil, because I have an image that's just consuming, or that's pointing to an images directory, which we still have to create, and then to the anvil.svg. And that will be part of the header. That will essentially be the logo at the top left of our app. And then we also have the background. Let me just see, where do I... One second. Yep. Okay. Oh, okay. So now I also, let me just make it a little roomier here. So I also inserted a new image, and it has the background class, and it is pointing to the images directory and then to a background.svg. And that is part of the welcome section or hero section, you could say. Okay, so that's the two images I created. And by the way, what I think is super interesting, that images or EMG elements, one of the few, actually, I just found a typo, are one of the few self-closing tags in HTML. So as you can see, all the other ones like div have an opening tag and a closing tag, but the image is a just self-closing tag. So it's essentially just one piece, right? Without any content in between. Pretty interesting, I think. So now if we save that and then we refresh the page, we get nothing. Right? You can see that there's a sort of a hint to a missing image here in the header section, because we haven't actually created this images directory, and we certainly haven't put any anvil.svg in there. Same with the background.svg. Okay, so let me create a new images directory. Oh, a new images directory. And I have prepared, here we are, that's the new directory. So I have obviously prepared those two images. Cool. So now we can see the anvil.svg and background.svg in here. And we also see this beautiful DS store Mac thingy that I will, of course, delete with another one here. That's just a default file that Mac adds to your directories when you open them with Finder. I think that's keeping like the Finder history and all of that in there. But I'm not sure. I might be wrong. Okay, so now let's go back to the browser and refresh. And whoa, that is a big anvil. That is a big anvil. Okay, so we also, let's add a few, because I'm not sure if you can see it, but I think the other image, below or behind the anvil, you can see it sort of at the, not sure if it comes across on screen, but you can see the other image behind the huge anvil. And it seems to be aligned pretty well, size-wise as well, but the anvil obviously is a little big. So let's add some more CSS classes to our header. So if we do space between and row, what does that give us? Yep, that's better. Okay, so space between just means that it should align the, so we have, this outer container here, this one, and then in there we have the image and then another container, and space between just means, move the things so far away from each other that you have the biggest possible space between the elements. Okay, so we did that, and I think we should also do a center. Can we do a center? That doesn't work. I was trying to align it because maybe I can do it here. Anyway, I'll just skip over it. That looks okay for now. So what we did now, we have this header section with a nice little anvil image, which is sort of our logo. And then we also have our background image right here. Okay, so let me zoom out a little bit more, because obviously this is sort of zoomed in big time for the live stream here, but this is more sort of what it would look like for a user visiting it, on a desktop browser. One second. So I think that looks pretty good already. Okay, obviously all the buttons here, they don't do anything, right? They're just they're just naked buttons. They don't do anything, but we will get to that. Okay, that was let me check my script here, or not script, but my prep that I did. So yeah, I think that was it for the HTML and CSS part. I mean, I know maybe it was a little confusing. I'm not sure, but maybe that's also just the nature of how CSS works. I'm not meaning to bash it or talk bad about it, but CSS is, as I said, sometimes you push the red button, the green light goes on. You push the red button again, the blue light goes on, and you're like, what? So it takes some getting used to, and you have to play around with it, and you have to really know your CSS class as well, and find a good way of managing them and making sure that you find things, because all styles are global as well. I haven't mentioned that even, meaning that all the, like, if you're not using any framework like we do here, all styles are global. So sometimes you like overwrite other styles, with other classes, and it can get super messy and confusing pretty quick. But it takes some getting used to, and then it is actually once you know what you're doing, it's super powerful. Like, it's crazy what you can do with CSS. Okay, so we've talked about HTML, we've talked about CSS, and now we have to talk about JavaScript. Okay, so let's now write some JavaScript, and this time it is being executed on the client side, right? That's what we're here for. So why don't we add this new, so let's go into the HTML here. So why don't we add this new script thingy here? So we can actually, I think it's pretty amazing, even though to me this comes more of a surprise that this works. If I look at it, you can just, in an HTML document, you can put a script tag, and then you can just write JavaScript inside that script tag. That to me looks more like magic than running it on the server, even though this, of course, this client-side piece here is, of course, the far older and more mature technology. But to me, as a rookie, as a youngster, it looks like a surprise that works. Anyway, what we can do here, we can essentially just, in our HTML document, we can write some JavaScript that the browser then will execute, okay? And what we do here is we define a new function using the arrow syntax, which I absolutely love. And it's an async function because we do some async stuff in there. So what we do is we fetch the /backend/products. So we fetch all the products from our backend, right? Remember, now we're on the client side. So now the client, visits the default route, gets the index HTML. This HTML gets executed in the browser, and this HTML, or the JavaScript inside that, now performs another request to this /backend/products route. And then what this actually returns is a promise, because this is an async operation, right? We just don't get the data back immediately. And this is just to not, this is because of the event loop in JavaScript, and we can maybe talk about asynchronous and synchronous things at some point. But this, for now, we just know this returns a promise, so we await that promise, and then once that's done, we get this response and turn it into a JSON, right? And this we have to wait as well because it returns a promise as well. And this is the actual result. So the result is the actual data that we get back, which in this case would be our 3 products that we have to find in the backend. Okay, so then next we do a document query selector, which means give me the HTML element that matches the following properties, you could say, because what we do here is basically passing an ID, because the hash, as I said, same as for the CSS styling. The hash is for ID, and the dot would be for classes. So when we say hash products, with a query selector method, that means give me the HTML element with the ID products. And we call that wrapper for now. And then we again grab the result and loop over the result. So our 3 products is our result. We loop over all the 3 products. And then for each product, we create a new element, which is a tag, which is a link. And we set a, like the thing that it's pointing to, like the thing that you're, being navigated to. If you click that link, which is the href, we set that to /product/product ID, like /product/ and then the actual ID. Like this is the template literal syntax here. So we create, for each product, we create this new link that points to this other page, and then we append this link to the wrapper, okay, which we got from the top, okay? So what we essentially do here is we get all the products, create a link for each product, and put it into this products container, okay? So let's, did I save it? Okay, something's not working as expected. Let's see. Let's check the network trace. I'm not sure if the request to the backend is actually being... Oh, it is being done? Okay. For the ones who... Oh, Alper just deleted the message. Okay, so we do get the data from the backend. Let's do some debugging here. So, okay, so we stop here at the response. We do get, let's set a breakpoint somewhere here. Okay, and if we should be here again and again and again. Yeah, 3 times. Okay. That looks good. Maybe the elements are there, but we just don't. Oh yeah, we see them, but you know what? The elements are there, but we just haven't set any visible text content. I think that's the issue. Okay, so the elements, as you can see here in the HTML DOM, the elements are there. Like we have the links, but they just have this href attribute, but they don't have any text content, so we can't see them visually on screen, although they're there. Oh, let's get rid of this breakpoint. This one as well. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now we do have some links here, and if we click them, they point us nowhere because this route is not yet defined. We'll probably, looking at the time, we'll probably get to that next week. But so we do have the links, and let's align them a little nicer because now they're like aligned, in a row, like from left to right, and that's not too nice. So this is the products wrapper. Let's create a new, or not create, but use the center row wide space around. Obviously, I just prepared that. So now they're still from left to right, and we'll keep that because we'll actually create like nice little product cards next week probably. But this way now we can see them a little nicer. So this is our hands-on SVDev web shop. So we now also have the JS part covered. So we now today did HTML, we did CSS, and then we did JavaScript, which is cool. So we do have 5 minutes left, so let's use this time. So instead of just pointing or shooting nowhere here, why don't we create a new HTML file? Yep, thanks Henrik, see you. So why don't we create a new product HTML for this piece right here? I do have something prepared. So we want obviously users to be able to, click on a product and then get to the product page itself. So, well, first of all, we'll delete this DS store again. And now in the public directory, again, we will create a new product.html. And what we do here is, actually this HTML is pure JavaScript, which is, yeah, not sure, which is just worth mentioning, I guess. So we have just one function that we execute, and what we do here is we actually get the URL that was, we get the URL that we're currently on, because if you go back here, so if someone clicks here, you can see they're going to /product and then / the ID of the product. So now we want the actual product page itself to read this ID. So we get the URL, we get the path name, and then we do some, string magic here, and then we, split it at the / and we get then we reverse it, get the first one, blah blah blah. So we essentially just get the ID from the URL, from the location. Then we send a request to the backend using the similar URL as we did in the index.html, but this time we don't say backend /products. That's it. This time we say /ID. So we just get this one. Product. And again, it's a promise, so we await it, and once it's there, we turn it into a JSON. That's our result. And then what we do with this result is we just create a one heading and put the result name as the text content, append it to the body, to the HTML body, and then we create another paragraph, and then set the text content to price, and then the price and the currency. Okay, cool. So if we do that and we refresh here, we still get nowhere, because /product, where should that even point to, right? If we go back to our index.js, we just have the default route here, which is pointing to the public directory, okay? But we haven't defined any /product. And remember, we turned all the previous ones that we had for /product, we turned that into /backend products, because really that's the backend logic, okay? That's the API we're interacting with. So now we do have to create a new client-side route, quote unquote. And I'm not sure, I don't think here we are. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so now we define this new route, and now this time we say app use and then /product and then the optional ID, right? And if that route gets hit, we send back the file public /product.html. Right? This is the one where we just put the script in. So the HTML file that is essentially just JavaScript. And then we also have to provide this root thingy here, just saying that the root of this send file thingy should be the current directory here. So public, in relation to the server directory we're already in right now. Okay, so import metadir is just ESM lingo for __ dir name. And let's try that. Yay, there we go. Okay, nice. So now we have our /product /some ID thing, and that's pointing to product.html, and product.html is essentially just JavaScript that gets the one product from the backend, creates a heading, creates a paragraph, and that's it. So if we go back to this one, so now we can click on the coffee mug and we go to the product page of the coffee mug. And if we click on the t-shirt, we go to the product page of the t-shirt. Okay. Obviously, Still looks pretty rough, but we have all the pieces connected now. And yeah, that was the client side. We're already a minute over, so I will close it here. I had a lot more planned for today, namely the UFF web components and using them with import maps, which is pretty cool. But I think this is a good time to stop, and we'll talk about the UFF web components next time. That's good. Okay. Thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. It was great to see you, and hope to see you next week, Wednesday, same time, Wednesday, 10 a.m. CET. Thanks. Bye bye.